We are in Proverbs chapter 22, beginning in verse 1. A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, loving favor rather than silver and gold. So we are talking about two different things, a good name and loving favor. All right, well, both of them go back to the individual. Both of them go back to the type of person that you happen to be. But the first part about this is a reputation is important. A reputation is something that will follow you. And if people don't know you, you're just an absolute stranger to them, well, you don't really have a reputation, but it won't be long of you being wherever you are that one will be built up there. People will begin to know what type of person you are. In Proverbs 20 and verse 11, it states, even a child is known by his deeds. And a child can have a reputation. And of course, we adults can have considerably lengthy reputations or track records of the things that we have done or didn't do. And you will make the meaning of your name. You will do it. And some people have taken that, because of their actions, have taken that to an extraordinary level. How many people do you know, have you ever met in your life whose name was Judas? Nobody that I know. Maybe you found somebody. But that's because of the reputation that Judas had. Judas Iscariot. Now, as it was in the first century, there were plenty of men named Judas. That would have been a common name. But after the New Testament is written and is distributed, and the church spreads, and things are known, yeah, that would be a terrible name to be given, because there is a reputation. That's not your reputation, but that's his reputation. Same thing would be, how many babies born today do you think would be named Adolf? Or not too many. Not too many, because of the reputation that was there. And people would just have that first in their mind, because that's a reputation done by someone who took it to an extraordinary level, being infamous. And that just follows them through the centuries for Judas, and almost a century for Adolf Hitler. But a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches. All right, once again, you will make the meaning of your name. There's also not just Judas, but there's also Zimri. Zimri in the Old Testament. That is precisely what Jezebel, that's another name that has a bad reputation to it. But Zimri, Jezebel, speaking to someone who she saw as usurping the kingdom, usurping the power away from her and her husband. She called him Zimri, because that's what Zimri did. Zimri reigned for a total of 1 week, and he died by his own hand. If he hadn't, well, he would have been killed by others. But Ahab is also one of those. It is greater than riches to have that good name, and that is something that each of us do. Proverbs 10 and verse 7, the memory of the righteous is blessed, but the name of the wicked will rot. And yeah, that is true. We just made mention of some. Jezebel, Ahab, Judas, and we could look at others that their names, no one wants that name anymore, but we make our name, and we make the meaning of that name. And we could do other names of people in the past, maybe well known, maybe only to a few, of where when you say that name, you know what that name means. Okay, another biblical name would be Dorcas. Okay. She had a reputation. She had a reputation. What was the reputation? Oh yes, she had a very good reputation, and that she was a skilled seamstress, and she gave to the poor. There, in many things that she did, she had a very good reputation, and that's not something that just happens to you accidentally. That is something you strive for. It is something that you have accomplished. You have done. Have you ever been with someone where they did something and it wasn't good? They did something, they have been caught, and they say, but this isn't me, or that's not me. Well, it is now. It's part of your reputation now. Sure, that's something you wouldn't have done when you were 10 years old, but you're not 10 anymore. You're now 30. That's something that you wouldn't have done when you were smaller, but now you have done. Now let's just go with that let's not let this be you from now on. Let's turn into something you'd rather be and move forward. And every single one of us, of course, we all make our mistakes, but another part of your reputation is you correct it. That's another part of the reputation. You made a mistake, but you also corrected it. And that becomes known. Now, loving favor rather than silver and gold. That's the second part of this. Loving favor rather than to be respected, to be trusted, to be esteemed, and there's affection. I would rather have the love of my family. I'd rather have the love of my family, of my wife and my children, and expanding off of that, my siblings. I'd rather have their love than to be adored by millions. And you know that one of the things about it is if you're after certain things, and such as fame, all right, there's going to be people that are sidelined, and it's people known as your family. That's typically the case of where the children of some very well-known actor or very well-known musician or whomever, that child doesn't know their parent at all. They don't know them. They see them just like everybody else on TV or wherever, but they don't know their parent. Well, loving favor is greater than silver and gold. Loving favor of truly there is a trust there. Truly there is a love that is there. Now we go to verse 2. The rich and the poor have this in common. The Lord is maker of them all. Let's discuss this for a second. In Matthew chapter 25, in verses 14 to 30, we have the parable of the talents. 3 servants that are there. One is given 5 talents, the next is given 2 talents, and the last is given 1 talent. Did they earn those talents? No, they didn't. None of them earned those talents. None of them. Those talents came from the same place, and it was their master. Their master, the one they served, gave them those talents. So the man with the 5 hefty talents cannot, or should not, I might say, should not look down his nose at the man with the 1 talent. Because he got his talents the same place the man with the 1 talent got his. You have the same master who distributes as he pleases. All right? One can say, well, that was unfair. I'm sorry, take it up with the master. Don't take it up with me. Take it up with the master. And he knew what he was doing. I can only assume he knew what he was doing. And it doesn't matter that it's unfair. It doesn't matter. That's not the point of the parable. All right? And it's the same master who gives to them all. Now, changing up just a little bit. We have James 2, beginning in verse 1 to verse 9, and it is, do not hold the faith of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Lord of glory, with partiality. You don't do that. You cannot, in this case in James, it does have to do with a wealthy person coming in or a poor person coming in. That with the wealthy, you put out all the hospitality, everything is there to welcome them. With the poor one, it's like, oh yeah, you might as well come on in too. Whatever. You just sit here on the floor, or you just sit on my footrest. That's good enough for you, I suppose. We are not to show partiality at all. And that's precisely what the rich and the poor have this in common. The Lord is the maker of them all. The same Lord that made the sun, and let's just face it, as far as we're concerned, that's perpetual energy. Now, it's going to end. Obviously, we know it is. But if it lasts millennia, if it lasts thousands of years, in and out, that's perpetual energy. The same Lord that made you too. Okay, and made everybody else. That same kind of power. Matter of fact, I would say that we are more likely, humanity more likely, to create another sun by way of our own abilities than we ever would be to make life. We can't make life. Life is extremely difficult, and there's no way you can create a human soul. You can't do that. And both are made by God. Now, Proverbs 29:13, the poor man and the oppressor have this in common. The Lord gives light to the eyes of both. Now, that with the ending on that, also is talking about the oppressor. Both of them have the poor in it and the Lord in it. But there's the rich and the poor, there's the poor and the oppressor. And that one does, being that ending on that one is makes a difference there, and when we get there, we get there. All right. But the rich and the poor, they all come from the same source, and it is God. Now, we can also look down to verse 7, because they're connected. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is servant to the lender. All right, different idea altogether. Different. Verse 9, he who has a generous eye will be blessed, for he gives bread to the poor. That's, once again, different idea. And then verse 16, he who oppresses the poor to increase his riches, and he who gives to the rich will surely come to poverty. These all discuss the poor. Now, being that the Lord is the maker of them all, He doesn't want you oppressing the poor. He made them too. He made the poor as well. And He wants there to be a generous eye. He wants us to take care of each other. Now, let's go to verse 3. And this too has connections in this chapter. A prudent man foresees evil and hides himself, but the simple pass and are punished. All right, 27 verse 12, that's Proverbs 27 verse 12. It's identical. It's an identical proverb. It's identical language. Okay, it's one of those that it has been repeated. Okay, and so we have the prudent man foresees evil and hides himself. He has the ability to see something, to identify a wicked situation and identify what's likely to happen, not just likely, what will transpire by way of consequences because of that wicked situation. Here is someone that foresees evil, and he hides himself. And I've made mention before that I do know some men who, in the occupation that they had, the job that they had bosses, and higher-ups that expected them to do things that were not good. Lying to customers, cheating customers, lying to others in the company, and those men that I'm talking about, they all left that. And it's various men in various jobs. They all left because they didn't want to do that. They didn't want to because they saw a wicked situation and they saw what would transpire. Now, it could be that nothing happens to that company or nothing happens to any of those places where they required lying. It could be that nothing happens in this lifetime. Hardly matters. It's God's judgment. God is not going to take the excuse of, I was just doing my job. He doesn't take that excuse. You know, a hitman can say the same thing. I was just doing my job. Well, you shouldn't have that job. All right? You should have a little bit of faith, quit that job, and God would put you where you don't have to kill people, or you don't have to lie, or you could do something else that is going to be a lot healthier all the way around. Now, a prudent man, he foresees the evil. Now we see this, but the simple pass on and are punished. They don't perceive the evil. They don't perceive what's going on is a very bad idea. They don't see it. And so they remain in the situation. They pass on and are punished. Now, we can see some verses connected to this. Verse 5, thorns and snares are in the way of the perverse. He who guards his soul will be far from them. Well, that's the prudent man who hides himself. Prudent man who gets out of there. He gets out of that situation. We also come down to going from there. We go all the way down to verse 14. Verse 14, the mouth of an immoral woman is a deep pit. He who is abhorred by the Lord will fall there. All right? And we'll talk about this more when we get there. But here is this one known as abhorred by the Lord. Means that here's your fool. Here is one that is far from prudent, does not foresee the evil, and falls right into that pit. Falls right into that. And it can be, you know, we talked about this once before in this class of what's known as the honey trap. And evidently it's a very, very successful way to blackmail somebody or to get somebody to falter and be easily manipulated, is that seductress being brought in and he falls into that pit. And now you have something to hold over that person. Well, that is not a prudent person. That's someone who has failed. And without knowing the dangers of all of it, and that this is a poisonous situation. This is nothing but poison. A prudent man, he sees that, has nothing to do with it. Nothing at all. Now, we go to verse 4. And this really goes, we can connect this to verse 1. By humility and fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life. All right, so a good name is chosen rather than riches. Well, here are the real riches. It's humility and fear of the Lord. There are the real riches. There's honor and there is life. And we have actually quite a number of proverbs through the book that make mention of the fear of the Lord. Matter of fact, the first proverb of the book, which if I have right in my head is chapter 1 and verse 7, I think. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. That is a parable, and that's the first one being listed. And it's all part of this discourse that goes from chapter 1 to chapter 9. But this is definitely it's a standalone proverb that you can understand what that means, and it's giving a basic principle. And it's an enormous subject, that one. Now, verse 4 again, so back in 22, verse 4. By humility and the fear of the Lord are riches and honor and life. And with the fear of the Lord, there's instruction of wisdom. Before him, and before honor is humility. And Proverbs 19:23, the fear of the Lord leads to life. And here is the value of that fear of the Lord. And for the sake of those who may not have been in this class, may not have seen anything of this class until now, I'll just say briefly that the fear of the Lord is due God. The fear of Him is due Him. Do you fear no one who holds a sword over you? And I mean by way of law, by way of order. I think you should. If someone has the authority and the power to do whatever they want, if they want to throw you in prison, they'll throw you in prison. If they want to kill you, they can kill you. They have the authority and the right to do it. All right, should you not fear them and respect them? What about your Creator, who can do far more than that? He can do far more than that. It's not just taking your life here. It's casting you, the real you not of this body, the real you that is cast forever into hell. Should there not be a fear and a respect for Him? And yes, there should be. He's not to be thought of as some teetering grandfather who pays attention to nothing. He has extraordinary power. Matter of fact, He has all of it. He has all power. That's what it means to be omnipotent. Okay? And here is this fear of the Lord. This fear of the Lord, if you truly fear Him, that means you keep His law. If you fear civil government, that means you keep the laws. If you fear the Lord, that means you keep His laws. That means you listen to wisdom, not the wisdom of this world. You listen to Him and what He has to say. Now we come to verse 5. And we made mention of this as connected to verse 3. Thorns and snares are in the way of the perverse. He who guards his soul will be far from them. All right, and once again, we know, folks, in our own lives that they have made a catastrophe of their own. They've made a catastrophe of their own life, such as that of the prodigal son, made a catastrophe of it. He comes to his senses, and here is a person, the way of the perverse. They go their own way, and there are thorns and there are briars. There's all these things, snares in the way, but they go anyway. They're going to go there regardless, and just take the thorns and take the snares and take all that just to do what they want to do, with everything getting in their way to let them know this was a very bad decision. And sometimes a person can wake up to discover that it's their lifestyle. It's their decisions that have brought all this upon them. That has made the junk heap that is their lives, or the whirlwind that is their lives. And sometimes we might want to take that moment and look at it honestly. Look at it as the way of, those that aren't doing the things that I'm doing, they don't have the same problems. Why would that be? Someone who is a homosexual is going to face certain problems in their life. They're going to. It was a documentary I saw many, many years ago, and it was about a gay man, and he was talking about all the funerals he had to go to of his friends who had died from AIDS. And he said, my parents don't even understand. They are considerably older than he is and haven't been to near as many funerals as he has. Certainly not of their friends of their age. Why would that be, I wonder? Because his parents weren't homosexual, nor were all of their friends homosexual. And that there was a difference. There was a difference. One of not seeing the thorns and the snares because they hadn't gone that way of perversity. They hadn't traveled that path. Therefore, they didn't see the consequences firsthand. I could see it with him, but maybe it was time for him to figure it out of, yeah, it's my choices and the choices of these others. That's what has done it. Now, verse 6. And we want to look at this for a bit. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. This is a direct command. There's a lot of commands in this. There's a lot of commands. And there are others that don't come off as commands at all. It would be, going back to 21:17, he who loves pleasure will be a poor man. All right, that's not a command at all. That's just describing a situation. All right, stay away from that situation. But here is, train up a child in the way he should go. Well, we already have that as a command from the book of Deuteronomy and other parts of the law of Moses. We have that. But here is being reiterated for us of train up a child in the way he should go. A child can only learn morality, the proper way to go, things concerning responsibility and taking responsibility for your actions, and your actions will lead to consequences. They can only learn that when they are taught, and they can be taught the easy way with a parent or an adult helping them, or they can learn it the very, very hard way. And children do want to know the limits. They want to know the limits. And if you think that you can just let a child do whatever they want and you will gain their friendship and gain their respect, you won't. You will not gain their respect. You will gain their ridicule. You will be a laughing stock to them because they know there should be limits. They know it deep down there should be limits. They are trying to find them. And of course you have the child being childish of just wanting their way, but they have to be trained. A child must be trained. And then we have this at the end. And when he is old, he will not depart from it. Now, we can know from this very book that is not set, as in that this is just going to happen regardless. Because it doesn't mean that. That this is dependent on the faithfulness of the child. Any child, including Solomon, can fall away. And Solomon fell away. Anyone can fall away. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. That is a very good principle, but it's not saying that the child is now a wind-up toy, or the child is now entirely programmed and has no will of their own. God does not take your will away from you. He does not. We always have a will. All right, so Proverbs 19:27, we covered this a number of weeks ago. Cease listening to instruction, my son, and you will stray from the words of knowledge. That's not saying you cease listening right now. That is for the rest of his life. He can be over 100 years old. He could be 95 years old or older, and you cease listening, that you don't stop listening to the words of wisdom. You don't graduate from it. You're never lifted above it, and now you can retire from it. You can't do it. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. But that child can cease listening. Proverbs 21 in verse 16, a man who wanders from the way of understanding. Well, he had it at one point. To wander away from something, you had to have been there to begin with. A man who wanders away from the way of understanding had understanding at one time. But now he's wandered off. That was his will. He has done it for whatever reason he found in himself. But Proverbs 4 and 5, it says, do not forget nor turn away from the words of my mouth. We have a lot of things like that in this. As a matter of fact, coming up soon, in verse 17, we have what appears to be a return to the discourse of incline your ear and hear the words of the wise and apply your heart to my knowledge, which implies you could hear them, but you don't apply them. It can definitely mean that. It can definitely mean that. And we can look at some rather righteous men in the Old Testament, rather righteous men, and see their children or grandchildren did not do so well. All right. How many times do we have, and vice versa, as a matter of fact, how many times do we have a king that's a really good king, but the son, the next king, that was a wicked king. And then coming down the line, another king that is not like the wicked one. He's like one before him, and he's good. Again, it's individual will, and the person. It's the person, and nothing is absolutely determined. Nothing is. This is what we are to do. And the fact of the matter is that it would be extremely difficult for someone, it can be done, for someone who has never taught the way they should go, never taught it, for when they are older to be taught it and for them to accept it. Now, once again, it's the will of the person. It can be done. But for them to have been given it at an early age, well, that's a lot better. It becomes something that is part of them for the rest of their life, but they can toss it away. Now, we have, in verses 17 to 21, as a matter of fact, of Proverbs 22, 17 to 21, there is the apply your heart. Apply your heart to these things. It is dependent upon you to do it. Me just saying it to a small child doesn't mean they have applied anything. And it doesn't mean that while they may apply it now and for the first 40 years of their life, may not apply it after that point. They can. They still have free will. They can still do that. And we need to understand that not everything in the book of Proverbs is an absolute given. Some things are, but not everything is going to be absolutely just stand alone. This is the truth and there's nothing else to consider. Now it is the truth, but there are other things to consider. Other things that must, from the further teaching of Proverbs, that shows it, to further teaching from the Bible, that shows it even further with example after example after example of where that would have been done. You know, how is it that how is it that Abel did right and Cain did not? They had the same parents. Surely whatever Abel was taught, Cain would have been taught too. Cain's the older anyway. How is it that Abel was taught it and Cain was not? Well, they were in the same household. They both had it. They both were taught it. But that doesn't mean they both did it. And as it turns out, Abel keeps it and Cain does not, and sinks. And they're right there, just getting to Genesis chapter 4, and we already have examples that show us that while you can try to train a child, that doesn't mean they will take the training. It doesn't mean it. But there is something that my dad said years ago, and I believe he was right about it. He said, when a child is brought up in a moral home, father and mother are moral people. He said, that child learns it and appreciates it and will find it easier to live the same way. It's not difficult for that child. That child will find it easier to live that way because they've witnessed it. They know what it looks like. They know what it looks like. And I remember a lady telling me that in her home where she grew up, she didn't know what a good home was. She didn't know what it was. It wasn't until she witnessed it from others that she realized what a home was supposed to be. Her parents evidently, I don't know anything about them, but her parents evidently were not good people. And those that surrounded them, aunts and uncles, cousins, whatever, they weren't good people. And it was not a good home. But training up a child means that you are doing your part. And while they may reject it, depends on the child, while they may reject it, you have done your part. And in fact, they will respect the parent more for requiring discipline, for putting a limit on behavior. That this is, on this side you've got good behavior, on this side is bad behavior, and we will punish the bad behavior. Every child, I'm sure there are the exceptions, some mental problems, but every child will respect that there is a line of behavior. There is a line. They can understand it. Now, we go to verse 7. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is a servant to the lender. All right, this is a basic principle of reality. It's also a basic principle of influence and pressures. This is just what we can see over and over and over again. The rich rule over the poor. All right, we can take this, and I'm going to do this for this point, is that this is, especially since the last phrase or last part of this couplet, and the borrower is servant of the lender. I can't take this from a spiritual perspective. Maybe somebody can show me how. But this is a physical perspective that it's part of human. It's a basic human principle and human behavior. That the lender has a weight of influence because the borrower is indebted. And there can be some strings pulled. There can be some things pulled. That is just something to be aware of. But Proverbs 28:11, the rich man is wise in his own eyes, but the poor who has understanding searches him out. Now, that is from a spiritual standpoint, and okay, rich man physically rich, poor man physically poor. But with this one, 22 and verse 7, I think this is talking about monetary means more than anything else. And but nevertheless, a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches. Going back to verse 1. It should be. And that it is better to be poor and having a good name. It's better to be poor and be righteous and blameless than it is to be overwhelmingly wealthy and people think you're a psychopath because you're behaving like one. You got all kinds of wealth, okay, but loving kindness, not so much. Loving favor, not so much. Verse 8, he who sows iniquity will reap sorrow, and the rod of his anger will fail. Do not think that these warnings are inconsequential or trivial. They are serious. They are serious. He who sows iniquity will reap sorrow. Galatians 6 and 7. Do not be deceived. God is not mocked, for whatever a man sows, that shall he also reap. Okay, I'll tell you a little thing about me, and it's not the best sort of thing about me, is I do try a bit of gardening. I do try. Okay, and I am guilty of the following. Of planting last year I was given unfamiliar seeds to me. Unfamiliar. All right, if you want to know where they came from, I'll tell you later. Unfamiliar seeds. And I felt obligated to plant them. Well, I didn't know what it was going to look like. I had no idea. So something starts popping out. And for the entire summer season, I was watering this thing, thinking I had something, to discover, wait, I got things in the yard that look exactly like this. This is one of the weeds. This isn't what I thought I was planting. I've been watering a weed in this hanging plant, this planter. And trying to nourish this thing. Okay, and come fall when I discovered it, I trashed it after all the care through the summer months. That's not what I was given. That is not what I was given. Okay, so technically speaking, I didn't plant that, but that was in the soil. All right, it was already there. It was already in the soil. Now, there are times such as with this, where I have planted something and I don't know what it's supposed to look like. I don't know what it's supposed to look like. But when you plant something, okay, that's a good rule of thumb. When you plant something, that's what you're going to get. All right, that's what you're going to get. And especially when we're talking about spiritual matters, when you are doing nothing but sowing iniquity, you will reap the plant of that, and that is sorrow. That is what occurs. That's what grows. You reap, you sow to the wind, you reap the whirlwind. All right? There's no stopping that. There's no stopping that. Even when there's still be consequences, even when you repent of it. All right, you can't expect the consequences to just blow away. Now, condemnation by God, that will be taken care of. At repentance, at obedience, condemnation by God, that will be cast aside. All right, that can be washed completely away. But that doesn't mean that the earthly consequences just vanish, because they don't. We can just look at someone like David who was a righteous king, until we have the incident with Bathsheba, and then not only do you have adultery going there, you have deception, and you have murder. That happens. All right. Did he repent of that? Yes. With Nathan coming to him, he repented of it, and we even have a psalm, wash me thoroughly from my iniquity. We have a psalm about that very thing. Was David forgiven? Yes, God even said he would have killed David. He would have killed him. But David repented. But there was still the sword that would not depart from his household. All right. That's a consequence. as a consequence. Condemnation by God, that can be lifted. But there can be other consequences from someone who lived their life in kind of a low life of drugs and alcohol. That's going to affect them physically for the rest of their life, even when they get away from it. Even when. That's going to affect them for the rest of their life. And there is sorrow that's reaped from this. And we come to the second part of this, and the rod of his anger will fail. All right? There's what is involved in this sorrow and failure. Anything that they planned on doing, any kind of wickedness that they were devising, eventually it comes to an end. The rod of their anger comes to nothing. We have come to the end of our class, and I appreciate everybody being with us. And hopefully next week we can continue. Thank you.